Hello, everybody, or no one. This is just a dry run of this. Gonna see how it sounds and how it looks. So this quick little recording is going to be about a brief presentation on medical legal aspects, or more specifically, how to give testimony in court. So it's entitled "Legal Eagle or Road Killed." This is for EMS 285, and as always, I'm Billy Shelby. All right, so here is something for you to think about. You respond to a single vehicle accident with two ejections. You got a 32-year-old female and a 7-year-old male. The boy, kids, relatively unhurt. Mom, not so much. Okay. So these two doctors deal with the patient. The female is admitted to ICU. Dr. Abasi, female deteriorated, narrowing pulse pressures, diminished cardiac output, muffled heart tones. Sound familiar? I hope so. And died 3 hours after their admission to ICU. Okay, so take a look at the time frame. April of 94, February of 95. You have up until 1 calendar year from a wrongful death to bring suit in most every state. So there's no difference with North Carolina as where this case came from. Okay, received the first indication of a $10 million wrongful death suit against everyone involved in the case. Never forget that whether you're just a first responder, paramedic, um, if you are providing any sort of professional care, then you will be named in that suit. Now, let's talk about some strategies, because it is the strategy of the attorney when they bring suit to win for their client. Okay, they don't play fair. They never have. They never will. What they're going to do is they're going to attack you. Okay, if you as an individual, you as an individual working for an entity, um, as a physician, they will attack them. Okay, so here are some dirty legal tactics. All right, they I borrowed this from a presenter. Okay, so you'll see the "I love getting on your skin," but basically, this gentleman is an attorney. Okay, and he represents a lot of medical legal cases. And the first thing that he says is he's going to mispronounce your name. Okay, he's going to misstate your credentials, and he is going to make you out to be less than you are. Now, why would that be? Well, it's going to irritate you. Okay. And if you're irritated, then you're less likely to be believable, credible, or taken uh, for the true professional that you are in this suit. Okay. So they're going to look at your documentation. As you know, if it wasn't documented, it wasn't done. Okay. But they're likely to add to it. Okay. Or detract from it. They're going to misstate things, and they're going to quote things that you may or may not have said. So your preparation for the court case is going to be everything. If you don't prepare, you can be made to look very foolish. Okay? The more documentation they have, remember, they're not going into this case not knowing that they may or may not have a case. Okay, some things are just prima facie. It is what it is. Okay, that's what prima facie is. It means on its face. All right. So if you lacerated somebody's artery trying to do a surgical crike, then obviously you screwed up. All right. And it is what it is. But most of the time, they play in a gray area where, depending on how one wants to interpret the actions or the inaction, you know, all you have to do as an attorney is make 12 people believe that you have dropped the ball in some way, shape, or form. Okay? So here are some of what they like to do. Big, thick piles of paperwork, making it look like he or she has a mountain of facts on their side, and all you've got is your copy of the run report. Now, I would say you need to treat every run report, every documentation case, like you're going to court. Okay, I've said that forever. If you're my student, you know that. Now, here's something else for them. Things that seem completely irrelevant to you if they beat on that dead horse, so to speak, then they are going to irritate you. And again, the small details mean a lot. Okay. Did you misspell something? Well, then you're not professional. Did you notate something incorrectly? Well, then you're not professional. And if I can, as an attorney, cast doubt on your professionalism, well, maybe you did mess up. All right. You see an example at the bottom. How many intersections did you cross between the hospital and the scene of the accident? Now, who cares? In our way of thinking, I had to get to the accident scene safely, and I had to render care, and I had to transport, do my best to stabilize and then transport the patient to the hospital, hopefully in better condition than what I found them. Okay. So what does it matter? What does it matter between how many intersections I crossed? But it's little things like that that are insignificant to us. It might mean something to them. Okay. And what it means to them is just a thread that they can pull at. Just a thread, just a little small nitpicky detail that they can bring up that now starts to plant the seed of doubt in a jury's mind. Okay. So keep your attention on him or her to prevent eye contact with the jury. Most times, all it takes is a slight movement or noise like tapping a pen or clearing a throat to make you look back. So that's what I want you to do. As an attorney, I want you looking at me, okay? Because your credibility is about connecting with the people you are giving testimony to. In essence, the jury, the judge. So they are going to keep drawing your eyes back to them so that you can't make that connection. They can't see the sincerity. They can't see the professionalism. But if you recall, okay, you may have seen that presentation, Do It for Drew, okay, and you saw a sworn deposition where that clinician, so called clinician, was giving sworn testimony and it was videotaped. Okay. And that videotape showed a less than empathetic individual. Okay. If you watch testimony, if you watch body language, if you listen to the tone of voice and answers, that person did everything wrong that you can do wrong. You have to come across as an empathetic and a professional individual to get credibility. Okay. So as they keep drawing your attention, they take that away. If they have you look down, if they have you, excuse me, sir, could you look over here? Or trying to get in your face, trying to actually impede your line of sight between you and the jury. Okay. So what else are they going to do? They're trying to get you to multitask. Okay. Something simple. All right. Here's the illustration, or here's the example rather. Draw a diagram and answer questions. Okay. So why? Okay. Because as we are trying to remember and trying to draw and trying to tell a story, guess what? We're going to look bad. I mean, this guy goes so far as to say if he wants you to look bad, he's going to have a dry erase board, which is fine. Okay. You want to draw an intersection, you want to point to how you came in, where you found the car, which way was it facing, all valid points. But look at that second bullet point down there at the bottom in red. I always use a dry erase board with old markers so the drawing looks terrible when it's done. Okay, something like that. They set the stage for you to fail because they want you to fail. Okay, now the defense attorney doesn't want you to fail, but this person is not interested in a defense. They are interested in that wrongful death suit. They are interested in money because it comes back to money. How professional does that look? Really? Okay. I've got an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old. Either one of them could draw better cars than that. Either one of them could, do a better job. But if you're not an artist, you're not supposed to be an artist. You're supposed to be a paramedic. Okay. Now, the next thing they're going to do, again, is cut away at your credibility. Okay. No, an EMT versus a paramedic. Okay. We're used to that analogy where medics can do more than EMTs. Okay, cool. Yeah, everybody understands that. But at the same time, they're likely to minimize your training, minimize what you know. So you're not a doctor, right? I mean, is a paramedic even a degree? Okay, well, you can say, yes, I have an associate's degree in EMS at the conclusion of this. It's just some certification, and they're gonna like basket weaving, like taxidermy, like, anything. Again, trying to undercut your professionalism and your credibility. So, like I said a little while ago, if you can't spell, if your documentation is messed up, then this is where they're going to hit you, because you, as a trained individual, a trained, quote, professional, shouldn't be making those kind of mistakes. They're going to exploit discrepancies between testimonies. Okay. Now, for lack of a better phrase, everybody to a certain degree is a conspiracy theorist. All right. And they're going to take advantage of that. And they're going to ask you questions where you're not going to have an answer. Okay. All right. We know scenes are chaotic. That's what makes this so easy. That's in an attorney's wording. They presented this. Okay. They're going to ask your partner, they're going to ask you, they're going to ask witnesses questions, and they're going to try and pick apart any sort of discrepancies in a timeline, what you were doing versus what they were doing. What was your coworker doing during the first full 2 minutes after you arrived? Well, unless you are in some sort of oversight, how are you going to know that? Because you're doing what you have to do in the first 2 minutes. So their perspective, being your partner, their perspective might be slightly different than yours. Their timeline might be different slightly than yours. And to the best of my recollection, is a phrase that you should use or learn to use when it counts. Right, to the best of my recollection, we arrived on scene. We began to do this. It was my job to do this, this, and this. My partner was doing these actions. You know, only attest to what you know to be fact. Interrupt your answers to one question by asking another. As you know, nobody likes being interrupted. Okay, it irritates everybody. As you see up here, the attorney himself said it pisses people off. That's what they're trying to do. And look at the point of that next sentence or the rest of that sentence. It's like he's catching you in something. And oh, well, since you brought that up, let me do this. Okay. Since you're starting to answer that question, they don't want the answers because the answers in total may not benefit them, that might not benefit their case. So if they interrupt, it sounds like, aha, I caught you. I got you. Here's something that you should be used to, that being asked the same question in different ways, looking for you to go back on it. If you look at personality testing or if you look at other things, I can ask you the same question in a couple different ways and get you to add some details in each way I form the question. And your questions aren't going to be verbatim, your answers rather. They're not going to be verbatim. And when they're not verbatim, it looks like something's being covered up. Okay? So, like the bottom, who was the first person you spoke with when you arrived? Who did you talk to just after you went on scene? Was there a contact person you spoke with initially? Same general question, but if you say, yes, I made contact with the first responder or the fire personnel on scene, that's the first answer. Okay. Who did you talk to just after you went on scene? Well, what if you remember you spoke with a family member on the way to talk to that firefighter, and then you changed your answer? What you want to say is, I ask where the fire scene was, or I ask where this was by a bystander, and proceeded to go to and speak with the fire. Your answer eventually was going to be the same one, but because I interrupted you and because I rephrased the question, you thought of something different. Okay. Was there initially a contact person you spoke with? Well, you said fire personnel, and who you talked to was the rescue squad chief or a rescue technician. So that's your contact person initially, perhaps. Okay, so you can see where that might be a straightforward question, But if you ask it in several different ways and there's one detail that's off, it looks like you're trying to change something, like there's something to hide. So, getting you to speculate, okay? Well, it's not our job to speculate, okay? It's not our job to guess. It's our job to arrive on scene. It's our job to treat the sick or injured. It's our job to transport them to the hospital and carry them to definitive care. So, why would they get you to do this? Well, look at that bottom question. What did the first arriving trooper do when he went on scene, and weren't you in charge of the call? Well, what does that mean? If you have EMS command, okay, that's a response. I had EMS command. I was not in charge of the scene. But in some cases, people would say, yes, I was in charge of that scene. But the trooper had stated previously during their testimony that they were in charge because law enforcement scene control kind of takes over. Okay. If it's a trooper, you're going to have a major contest between a fire chief and a state trooper as to who is ultimately on charge of that or in charge of that scene. Okay. We might have EMS command of a multi-tiered response or a multiple patient response, but were we in charge? Well, if you're the ranking member, you were EMS command, but you weren't in charge of the call. They're going to make derogatory statements about you, your service, profession. Why? To get you mad. If they see you sweat, that old commercial, never let them see you sweat. That's what these people are doing. They're trying to get you to sweat. They're also going to bring up things that you would think, hey, this is out of bounds. This has nothing to do for this. But look at the red. I love civil trials for this. Okay? I can drag people's personal lives into it just to watch them sweat. I've been divorced 4 times, but then again, people don't blink an eye when lawyers are dirty. So this guy self-admits during his presentation, which I, again, I am borrowing, he self-admits that lawyers can be dirty tricksters, okay? They can be D-bags. They can be the biggest scuzz and scum that you'd ever see. But nobody, it's a lawyer, okay? Everybody else makes fun of lawyers for that reason, ambulance chasers, et cetera, et cetera. So they don't worry about being thought of. But the general public, if you have a drinking problem, if you've had issues in your past, you know, what's he getting at? Again, he's not getting at anything. They're just trying to knock you off your heels. Okay, they're trying to get you uneasy about this whole process. Ask you a technical question trying to show a lack of knowledge. Okay, again, why? Why would they do this? A lack of professionalism. If they show you to be less than knowledgeable, then all they would have to do is get somebody like me or like some of your peers, okay, who are credentialed paramedics, who have a degree, who avail themselves to being called a quote expert witness. Okay, it's about the paperwork hanging on the wall. It's about the documentation of your credentials, and then it's about getting hooked up with these type of attorneys who will sue and drag EMS into it. So they'll ask you, how many pairs of spinal nerves run through the rib cage? Well, that's some medical trivia for you right there. That's some medical trivia for you. Okay. But if you go on a long explanation about your anatomy and physiology, well, you have a pair of spinal nerve roots that branch out from each vertebral body. Okay. And they go on and they innervate in different areas of the body. And you have dermatomes and myotomes where you have muscular response and or sensory input. As you start to explain that, you sound knowledgeable. once you get it all out. But what are they trying to do? They're just trying to catch you off balance. That's all they're trying to do. And if you get it wrong, or if they can cast doubt that you got it wrong, that's what they're trying to do. Okay? So pin you down on words like sometimes, frequently, generally, or always to show exceptions or breach of rules. There are exceptions to every rule. I just have to get you to admit it. Okay, look at the bottom. You operate off a set of protocols, and because of the nature of your job, you always have to know what they say without looking them up. Is that true? I mean, yes, we operate off protocols, and you always have to know what they say without looking them up. Well, what if you did look them up? What if they ask you that question? If you know what they say without looking them up, what do you think's coming next, folks? They're going to pull out your protocols and they're going to ask you to verbatim, probably spit out that protocol and say what it says. And what if you get it wrong? Well, you just said you have to know without looking them up. You have to know what it is. So what if they go for something that you just kind of take for granted, like the stuff at the top, where BLS may intervene to begin with? Get you to admit past mistakes and establish a pattern of errors. Look, that attorney admits they can subpoena anything. Guess what? If they subpoena your IV rate, that's QA and QI data. And if it looks like you stink at doing your job, just the functional portions of doing your job, there you go. That's a way to drop your esteem, your professionalism in the jury's eyes. So, how do we combat all of these things? You got to review your paperwork. You got to review that call. Okay. Whether it's medical or trauma, you're going to run a bunch of calls and you're not going to remember them all. Nobody's going to memorize all of the calls that they go on. Okay. There will be some, unfortunately, that stick with you, but that's more of a PTSD. These were significant for whatever reason. And you can remember most every detail about those calls. But the majority of them, they just blur. Know your report, read your transcripts, especially if you've given previous testimony in pretrial hearings. If you are deposed, you have access to your deposition. Okay? Read that. During the discovery phase, all things that are considered evidence, and depositions are considered evidence, admissible evidence. You can read those. They can be supplied by basically the attorney who is on your side. Okay? During that pretrial hearing, during that pretrial phase, during that discovery phase, as they're getting these depositions, you give that and it's recorded. Okay? And you get a transcript of it. You get all the questions, you get all the answers that you're given, and then if you don't look at it, what's going to happen? Details may change. And when they change, it's going to be made out like, all right, well, that was the truth. Which is the truth? When you gave your previous testimony or today, they're going to make it look like you're lying. So, talk to counsel. Will your employer protect you in the course of civil litigation? Well, yes and no. Okay, if you're working for a municipal agency, that attorney is there to represent that municipal agency and that municipality more so than you. Okay? Now, doesn't mean that you have to run out and get your own attorney, but by protecting you, they protect that entity. But make no mistake, you are in second place when it comes to they're trying to protect someone. Okay? If they have to cut you loose, they will. That's just the way of the world. Okay? So if you know a specific scene, okay, like an accident scene, go back to it. Okay? Be familiar with the area. All right? Be prepared to explain anything that's changed since that time. Just, there's a new stoplight. They put in a stop sign. They have redone something within that area. Okay, maybe it was a direct result of the accident that you responded to. Who knows? But if you don't go back to it, well, what's the chances that they just pop up a picture and you say, no, that's not what I recall. That's not what I remember. That's not how it looked. And yet today, this week, it is. Remember, like a good umpire, you're supposed to be impartial, just the facts. Okay? This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I did. It's not your job to speak for other people. Treat opposing counsel with respect. Remain friendly, relaxed, and respectful as best you can. Remember, they're trying to irritate you. They're trying to make it so that you are a little back on your heels, like you aren't really sure. You know, they're trying to make it look like you're not a professional individual. If you need a minute, to look at something or to review, don't just try and fly off the cuff and give a quick answer. No, you want to give a correct answer. If you need to refer to your report, tell them. But if that's in the documentation, I'd have to refer to my documentation. If this, I'd have to refer to my documentation. Why? Because they have up to a year to bring suit. In our court system, you're looking at 3, 6, sometimes 12 months before it ever hits court. Okay, that call was at least 2 years ago at this point. And now, how clear is your memory going to be? That report was written that day, most likely, and is going to be a better representation of what you did. Don't be evasive. If you don't know something, don't try to beat around the bush. Don't try to protect other people. Don't try to protect yourself. Okay? Be honest. Be professional. Now, while you're doing that, don't volunteer anything. Keep your answers short. Okay? Direct questions gets a direct answer. When you see that second bullet point, silent pauses are great for eliciting unnecessary information. What if you give your answer and they don't respond? Okay, there's a big pregnant pause right there where they're not saying anything and they're trying to get you to start talking again. Okay, so if his example at the top, if you can answer, if it can be given in 3 words, it's better to use 2 than 4. Okay, well, what does that mean? Keep it short, keep it factual, and don't elaborate unless asked to do so. Relax. Okay? If you get angry, okay, we kind of switch to fight or flight. Okay, that's what we do. All right. And in that case, you're going to want to take a swing. All right. Now, I don't think that you do that, but it doesn't have the executive functions, the cognitive functions of your brain working in your interest. Okay. You're going to act off of a more base response level. So your cognition won't be as high, and any sort of anger is going to seem unprofessional. If you don't know something, say that. I don't know. I don't remember. If you make up stuff, well, now you're no longer testifying. You're telling a story. There's a big difference. You're creating a story. You're not Stephen King. You're not there to tell a story and entertain people. You're there to testify to the truth as you know it to be. Don't turn a beating into a killing. Now, what does that mean? Don't let these people who are trained to twist and turn the story, the truth teller, into something that they're not. They're trained to do that. So you're going to get beat up. Don't help them. That's what that means. If you have any questions, you may send them to me via email. Thanks.